And also make sure to sub to the channel, okay? The main channel, the Vaush pit, and I don't know, some of the clip channels. Get over there too.
Oh, and another thing, I actually just finished Avatar: The Last Airbender, and
that show agrees with my message because they all end up getting along.
Okay, listen. I think the show is amazing. I think, you know, any baby leftist should go watch that because I think it's good, somewhat good for radicalization in a way. But I watched your video dissecting the show and saying, you know, if it came on now, conservatives will hate it. And I agree with you on that. But when you said Tankies hate the Jet episode, I kind of cringed. Because what did you mean by that? What did you mean by that?
Well, in it, Jet was essentially saying that you could justify, like, any violence against your oppressors, even if it meant targeting civilians, because it's in the service of some kind of, like, broader opposition. So, for example, Jet was saying that the crimes committed by the Fire Nation were so severe that his occupiers deserve to die.
I just want to acknowledge to chat, I am not a tankie. Please stop. I am not a tankie. But go on.
Yeah. Jet believed that the crimes of his occupiers were so heinous that actions against even the civilian population were justified, you know, that the antagonism was justified. So Jet was willing to kill a bunch of people by flooding a town with a dam, right? I feel like the logic of that episode was a rejection of that essentialist attitude.
Okay, I somewhat agree with that. I think that Jet's anger was somewhat justified. And there was a similar situation later near the end of the show where Katara and Zuko went to go find his mother's killer. And her not killing her mother's killer, I think in a way, somewhat pacifies radical ideologies. Like, I feel like that scene was a little, I didn't like it, not because, like, you know, forgiveness is cool and all. But I do think that, like, somewhat in a way, it pacifies, you know, our message. Our message at the end of the day is a revolution against the capitalist class who continues to oppress the proletariat. And I feel that that specific scene somewhat pacifies, you know, a lot of the rage and anger she had towards the Fire Nation. Well, and I somewhat believe that happened at the end where Aang, instead of, you know, killing the Fire Lord, he just takes his bending, which in a way sort of coincides with the real world. Like, you know, distributing wealth to everybody won't take away, you know, social bigotry. So I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Well, I mean, past the point, it's a kid's show, right? I mean, these seem more like.
No, it's not. It's definitely not a kid's show.
Well, you know what I mean. It's a show airing on Nickelodeon at the very least. I think. I think, like, I mean, those are more character beats than anything, right? The reason Aang didn't want to kill the Fire Lord was personal. He's a pacifist. I mean, everyone else was doing it, right? Like, everyone else was encouraging him to kill the Fire Lord. Aang had to find another solution. That's not to say there's not a hint of, like, you know, liberalism in the idea that it's morally superior to capture rather than kill, like a genocidal maniac like Ozai. But I don't know, it seemed like a character beat. And I feel like in the case of, like, Katara, that was also more of a don't denigrate yourself by, like, murdering this person who can't defend themselves type of deal. But I don't know. I think you can read into those, like, interpretations that aren't, like, explicitly denunciations of violent activism, but, you know.
And then I think, you know, when we examine the show Legend of Korra. Legend of Korra was, in my opinion, it was a 7 out of 10. It was still an amazing show, don't get me wrong. But I do think that each of the villains were in it. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily Kuvira, but Amon, season 2's villain, and Zahir. I feel like the villains, in a way, showed that the creators did not know anything about politics at all. Like, the first season was basically a bastardization of communism. Like, basically, they made it seem like, oh, you know, benders are bad because they oppress people. But the creators, in a way, they didn't show any benders getting, quote unquote, oppressed by benders, which in a way, the creators were trying to say, all the inequality and the oppression that you woke people say exists, it doesn't actually exist. I feel like that was the reason why they made Amon the way they did, even though he somewhat had points. Because I was talking to my friend and he said that, in a way, if Aang were still alive at that time, he would possibly understand why non-benders hated benders because him personally seeing his entire race get destroyed by bending by the Fire Nation. So I feel like, in a way, Amon somewhat had of a point. Now, I don't agree with everything that he said. And the way they made him to turn out to be a bender is an allegory to in real life. They'll say, oh, all you communists, y'all just want to be rich yourselves. That's where I feel like that's where they went with that specifically.
Oh, my takes on Korra are long-winded and well-documented. You're not going to get me on that one. That is a whole goddamn convo. I think there are plenty of political problems with The Legend of Korra.
I mean, the villains are honestly the only problems. Everything else is pretty spot on, if you ask me.
Well, like, I definitely still enjoyed watching it.
I mean, other than the villains, what other critiques could you possibly have? Because the villains are the reason why the show is bad. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna say bad. It's the villains, the way they were made. Basically, the creator said, "We're gonna make the villains as as nutty as possible." So then at the end, they'll say neoliberal capitalism is the only solution. That's basically what the villains were supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't disagree that a recurring element of a lot of these stories is an unwillingness to challenge bad political ideologies beyond like liberal democracy would be preferable.
Why don't you believe that? Because
wait, hold on. We've been off so many topics. Wait, hold. Are we on Legend of Korra now? I can't. You're getting my sleep deprived brain to leap over a whole lot of content here. My goodness, I gotta remember the whole of the Korra show. You gotta help me. Be kind to me.
Somebody in your chat said that Korra was a lib show. In my opinion, agree or disagree, I do think that Korra was a liberal. She was so unbearably liberal. Like at the beginning, for the first scene, the dude was at the town park talking about how benders are oppressing them, and then she said, "You're oppressing yourselves." Like I thought she just finished listening to Ben Shapiro if she's saying shit like that.
Look,
like no,
I don't disagree. The problem ultimately is that both The Legend of Korra and The Last Airbender posed as fairly apolitical shows, Like, in both cases, they advocate for what is kind of framed as a common-sense political ideology, Even in The Last Airbender, which is a really good show, but in The Last Airbender, they were fighting against totalitarian theocratic fascism, with Fire Lord Ozai, or I guess, I don't know,
everybody can get behind that. Everybody can get behind that.
Right, well, if a liberal's point is, hey, let's fight against totalitarian theocratic fascism, genocide, then like, okay, great point, liberal, But the issue is that in The Legend of Korra, the villains are all caricatures of different ideologies. Like, Kuvira is a fascist, of course. Zahir is an anarchist.
I'm sorry, Zahir had a... I'm sorry.
Zahir had a point.
Would I be considered Zahir was right?
Zahir had a point. He had, like, he was the protagonist of that season. Anyway, yeah, no, I agree. The issue is that liberal critique is pretty strong when it's against the thing liberalism replaced. Liberalism replaced, theocratic monarchies. That was the thing it replaced. That's what came before liberal democracies in most cases. But anarchism, that's supposed to come after. That's the follow-up. So it seems like the natural critiques there get a lot weaker, and you need to be more explicit with the way in which you challenge these positions. But you can't do that without being forthcoming about them. And, oh my goodness. You can't do that without being forthcoming about them. And if you can't be forthcoming about them, which they can't because, again, it airs on Nickelodeon. It's not like they're going to go into diatribes about the necessity of liberalism or whatever. There are limitations.
Okay, so...
Wait, hold on one second. Hold on. There's light peering through my window. 1 second. All right.
Wait, so do you actually... Because I see a lot of times on your channel, you make fun of anarchists. A lot of the time.
I make fun of people who make bad anarchist arguments, I think. I'm sympathetic to the political... Do you think
that Zahir made a good anarchist argument? Because you remember in the forest where they were when he was in the spirit world talking to Korra, he made Korra look like a dumbass.
Yeah, Zahir was pretty explicitly the protagonist that entire time. Yeah, I think so, at least. Because in a way, it reminds me of some of the arguments that I've made before about superheroes. The idea of the Avatar is fundamentally an undemocratic one. The idea that every, like, generation, or every time the last Avatar dies, you get a completely politically unappointed, unaccountable to any public process, like, demigod, capable single-handedly of altering, like, worldwide conflicts with the power they personally control. To an anarchist, this is monstrous. I mean, you're essentially just randomly giving one person every generation the Ubermensch title and just hoping they turn out to be good. Especially now that Korra has severed her links to all the past avatars, there's not even like a spiritual advice-seeking component that might temper their bad tendencies. Imagine if Korra had sided with Kuvira. Imagine if Korra had been born and indoctrinated into Kuvira's government. Imagine if she had gone to fucking Kuvira Jugend camps when they were growing up. Like, there's a spiritual element to being the Avatar, but...
They would have had to stop the Avatar if she were to be indoctrinated like that.
I'm sorry?
If she was the Avatar and grew up like Kuvira and was indoctrinated with that type of shit, then they would have had to stop her, because then she would end up becoming a fascist.
Well, right. Well, I mean, good luck stopping her. She's a demigod, right? That's the point. Nobody was able to stop Korra the entire time she was running her show. Aang took down the Fire Lord during Sozin's Comet. Like, with that fucking Avatar state shit, they can, like, wipe cities off the map. So Zahir, had a point. The idea of someone like that. Zahir's whole thing was like, hey, I'm sorry, Korra, you're not a bad person inherently, but for the betterment of the world, people like you have to go. So, like, seriously, what, like, chat, did he do anything that was explicitly monstrous, you know? Oftentimes, in shows like this, the character will do, like, a very bad thing, you know, to sort of round it out. Like, here's why you hate them. Like, Zahir would have had this moment where he, like, randomly kills a baby or something, but he assassinated the queen. Okay, I'm fine with that. But, like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, oh, no, your chat's saying he killed the queen. That's not monstrous. Like, as leftists, we're not supposed to look at world leaders who oppress people, see them get killed and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset. Like, we should be happy because that person is no longer in power.
Didn't he kidnap the Airbender children? Wait, he kidnapped the Airbender children, but didn't he do that to bait out Korra? That was a bait, right?
I think him kidnapping the Airbender children, that was bad. That was actually bad.
Yeah, he still kidnapped them. Okay, yeah, it's still bad to kidnap children. However, if you're kidnapping children in service of your attempt to assassinate someone as powerful as Korra, we're getting closer to, like, you know, dicey but politically justifiable territory, you know? This is up there with, like, condemning a revolution because it led to, like, you know, people getting hurt. Like, it's like, well, yeah, but, you know, killing the queen created a power vacuum that allowed Kuvira's rise. I wonder if that still would have been a problem if, like, Zahir hadn't been stopped. He probably had plans to, like, rehabilitate the Earth Kingdom afterwards, you know? I don't know.
Wait, Vaush, my last question was going to be, since you brought up, you know, superheroes and all, I haven't seen the Batman movie, but I was going to say that, you know, do you think if the Avengers were real, that as leftists we should support them? We should support them, or no? Should we be against them?
That is a very broad question. I don't know how you could even support or be against them, given that they're like a team of unelected superhumans, but I mean, if the Avengers are doing what they do in the story, which is fighting, like, demigods and alien invasions, then I guess you can support them doing that. Like, have fun against Thanos, I guess. But I think we all know that if in real life, like, the Avengers existed, they would all be on the payroll of the U.S. State Department, and they would be used to, like, crack down on protests, okay? So, I don't know. It seems like the system at work here is,
Wait, no, hold up. Yes, I'm glad somebody mentioned The Boys, because I haven't watched it, but I heard it's very, very good. That I think when we look at the Avengers specifically, I think that, you know, Captain America, as oxymoronic as his superhero name is, I don't think that he would have been on the U.S. State Department payroll. I don't think so. I think obviously, you know, Tony Stark would, because, you know, all the Elon Musk stands, you know, get horny over him. But, like, at the same time, I don't really think that Captain America, because in the movie, obviously in
I've
the
seen
Civil War,
yeah, I know. But the thing is, I'm saying that in real life, I don't think the people who have this power would be this, like, idyllic and morally upstanding, right? Because that's always the myth of superhero stories. All the people that get these superpowers are, like, really noble and good. I don't know why they would be. In real life, all the people who have power are, like, monsters. Like, in real life, over and over, whether they be monarchs or businessmen or whatever else, like, they're almost always bad people who are corrupted by the power they have. So I don't know why I would ever think that somebody who can tank bullets without dying would ever be, like, more morally upstanding than the average person, you know?
Mm-hmm.